Some years before the start of the Second World War, Adolf Hitler had an idea that kept him awake at night: to have his own security force. That's why, with meticulous attention, he tirelessly worked to form a group of men prepared both militarily and intellectually to watch his back and defeat the enemy. Today, followers, we will get to know the personal troops of the Führer, the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. Beginnings and formation. On September 12, 1919, Adolf Hitler attended the initial meetings of the German Workers' Party in order to belong to a political organization aligned with his ideology. This same group would later become the National Socialist German Workers' Party. That same year, the future Führer found the need to protect his integrity, so he began the process of forming a security force that would make him feel safe. Initially accompanied by his colleagues Julius Schreck, Wilhelm Bruckner, Julius Schaub, and Ulrich Graf, he opted to create the Sturmabteilung, also known as the SA or Brown Shirts. These innovative forces were inspired by the model of the Army's 19th Grenadier Company, and even included some of its men. Several months before the Munich Putsch of 1923, in which both Hitler and Rudolf Hess attempted a coup d'état, the SA began searching for men capable of defending and being loyal to the beliefs dictated by National Socialism. This search unexpectedly paused after the aforementioned putsch, as Adolf Hitler was imprisoned and both the National Socialist Party and all its paramilitary units were dismantled. In April 1925, a few weeks after his release from prison, Hitler sought to organize his long-desired security forces. To prevent the setbacks experienced in Munich, he ordered the formation of a new bodyguard unit capable of protecting him from any adversity. For this reason, he created the protection command Schutzkommando, which he soon after renamed the Sturmstaffel, or Assault Squadron. Finally, the Hitlerian forces would change their name definitively to become the Schutzstaffel, better known as the SS. 8 years later, the SS had grown significantly. Gone were the days when only 8 men watched over the German leader's back. An organization of 50,000 members was preparing to usher in the darkest times of humanity. Upon assuming the chancellorship, Hitler displaced both the traditional guards of the Reichswehr and those of the state police. He believed he needed trusted men so that no detail escaped his notice. Furthermore, he ordered the creation of a force tasked with escorting him both in Berlin and on his official travels. On March 17th, Adolf Hitler founded the Armed Personal Guard Stabswache Berlin, which later became known as Stoßtrupp, divided into different units. One of these was called Sonderkommando Berlin, which within a few weeks managed to reach 120 members. Less than 8 months later, on November 9th of the same year, the new military unit had grown to 800 members. The Stabswache Berlin was renamed Sonderkommando Zossen and had 3 training companies, whose instructors came from both the army and the police. In addition to their conventional guarding duties, this special force had the authority to act as an armed police force and carry out anti-terrorist missions. September 1933 approached, and the Hitlerian forces added 3 new companies called SS Sonderkommando Jüterbog. These units merged with the Stabswache to form the Adolf Hitler Standarte. On November 9th, the German military decided to rename these forces and call them Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, meaning Adolf Hitler's personal bodyguard. Unlike the SS, which by then were led by Heinrich Himmler, the Leibstandarte were to follow exclusively the orders of the commander with the rank of SS Gruppenführer Joseph Sepp Dietrich. In front of the Feldherrnhalle in Munich, hundreds of soldiers pronounced the words of the SS loyalty oath. I swear to you, Adolf Hitler, as Führer and Chancellor of the German Reich, loyalty and valor. I swear to you and to the superiors you appoint, obedience unto death. May God help me. The men of the Leibstandarte were considered more capable than most German soldiers, including those of the Wehrmacht. To join this division, members had to meet the following requirements: have an Aryan certificate endorsed by Heinrich Himmler's signature, have a minimum height of 1.80 meters. Those who did not reach that height were sent to the Totenkopfverbände, a subunit of the SS, possess physical and intellectual aptitudes above average, have a physical appearance in line with pre-established standards. Each member remained a novice until their superiors deemed both their ideological indoctrination courses and their infantry and armored vehicle handling skills approved. Only those who met the model of the super soldier athlete were able to pass the exams. This included indoctrination based on hatred of Jews and communism. Among the exercises to be performed, they had to use live ammunition and be able to place a magnetic mine on a tank. They also had to know how to handle dangerous situations, carry out rapid assaults on enemy positions, assume leadership in combat, and propose initiatives to their superiors. Additionally, they underwent training in mountain warfare, beach assaults, neutralization of booby traps, and conducting commando raids in enemy territory. Each applicant or novice had the full authority to resign freely if they could not withstand the training. Once the oath was taken, the decision was irrevocable until death. In fact, leaders often psychologically pressured applicants to filter out those who could not bear their role as soldiers. Their uniforms were known for being black, with a sleeve displaying the name Adolf Hitler. Additionally, their emblem was the skull, a popular symbol that had been used in various elite units of the Kingdom of Prussia and the Second Reich. This group had been created both to carry out pivotal missions and to exclusively protect the future Nazi dictator. Initially, their tasks included guarding the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, standing guard at the main entrances of the palace, and Hitler's office. Developing a strong friendship with Hitler, Dietrich had absolute freedom to make decisions without consulting any superior. In fact, according to Himmler's words, the leader of the Leibstandarte had full authority to do whatever he pleased in terms of budgetary decisions. Hitler himself had given him the authority to use money as he saw fit. Additionally, Dietrich was one of the few privileged individuals to have direct contact with the SS top brass. By the end of 1933, the Leibstandarte offices were relocated to the Berlin-Lichterfelde barracks, where they enjoyed greater comfort and better infrastructure to guard the German dictator's back. Additionally, they established in Bad Tolz, a city in Bavaria, a war academy called SS Junkerschule. The pillars of this institute were based on principles outlined by Felix Steiner, who said, "We need a type of soldier who is adaptable and flexible, athletic in bearing, and capable of enduring more than the average resistance." At the SS Junkerschule, they had football fields, boxing halls, gyms, and both outdoor and heated pools. The instructors were none other than Olympic champions in various specialties. They also required training in non-military matters, including etiquette. They had to read an etiquette book containing instructions on table manners. Additionally, they received somewhat curious orders, such as the correct way to end a letter. This involved writing, "Heil Hitler, yours sincerely," and the sender's name. Another mandatory reading was Mein Kampf, a book written by Adolf Hitler. By 1934, the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler had been consolidated and had about 1,000 men, the majority of whom were affiliated with the National Socialist Party. Only a few had been recruited directly from the police or the army. They also had a handful of Austrian Hitler admirers, whose political convictions forced them to leave their homeland and settle in Germany. For Dietrich, it was important to differentiate from the SS. As a formation directly linked to the Führer's figure, they wanted to have their own terms and nomenclatures. That's why they obtained Himmler's authorization to use various terminologies related to the army, abandoning those of the Schutzstaffel. Thus, they discarded terms such as Sturmbahn and Sturm to use words like bataillon or company. June 30th, 1934 was not just any date for these Hitlerian forces. On that day, they became a pivotal piece in crushing the Röhm Putsch and were directly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of enemies of Nazism in what came to be known as the Night of the Long Knives. On that day, Hitler initiated a plan to seize control of all structures of the German state. In this way, the Leibstandarte collaborated in the murder of critics of his regime and public figures who opposed his path to global leadership. Hundreds of arrested individuals ended up at the Leibstandarte barracks, which became a clearinghouse for prisons and unwanted corpses. After the wave of executions, the forces met Hitler's expectations, who did not hesitate to reassign Dietrich to the position of SS Obergruppenführer. Additionally, he also promoted to a higher rank all members of the Leibstandarte who had had any kind of active participation in the Röhm Putsch. In October 1934, Hitler's guards received a very uncommon honor for that time. While most forces continued to use horses, they already enjoyed the use of tanks. The Leibstandarte ascended in its formation and now had more than 2,500 members, divided into 3 motorized infantry battalions. They not only had motorcyclists, mortars and armored vehicles, but were also known in various cities for their acclaimed musical orchestra. The high regard of the Führer for his favorite formation brought serious tensions with other military forces of the Reich. The fact that the Leibstandarte was financed directly with state funds and not with the National Socialist Party's funds helped them be viewed with suspicion by their peers. The eagerness to achieve total autonomy clashed with their logistical dependence on the Wehrmacht, the unified armed forces, weapons of the Waffen-SS. Throughout the Second World War, the Germans used 2 weapons that over time became a living symbol of the Leibstandarte. On one hand, the Maschinengewehr 42, better known as the MG42. This weapon, created in 1942, had the mission of replacing the MG34 as the Army's official machine gun, as the latter incurred high economic costs in the manufacturing process. The MG42 was capable of firing up to 1,800 rounds per minute with high efficiency, and on top of that, it was inexpensive, quick to manufacture, and extremely reliable. It's worth noting that the MG34 only fired 850 rounds per minute. In the corridors of the bunkers, it was nicknamed the Circular Saw and Hitler's Reaper. Another of its most valuable qualities was its easy adaptability to all types of terrain. Neither mud nor dust nor snow could hinder its optimal functioning. The development of this machine gun was overseen by Metall- und Lackierwarenfabrik Johannes Grossfuss AG. The MG42 weighed 11.6 kilograms with bipod. For sustained fire, it was mounted on the Lafette 42 tripod, specially created for the occasion, which weighed 20.5 kilograms. The machine gun had a recoil-operated action system and fired 7.92 mm Mauser caliber cartridges. Using this machine gun required a team of 3 people, a non-commissioned officer who acted as the gunner, an observer, and a loader, who had to hold the belts and feed the gun when it ran out of cartridges. However, every virtue hides a defect, and in this case the high rate of fire of the MG42 easily translated into excessive ammunition consumption. Additionally, such a rapid firing speed caused excessive barrel heating. That's why the figure of the loader was crucial, as from time to time they had to replace the barrel with extreme caution and urgency. However, no haste was enough, as the change was never fast enough and allowed enemies to attack those who were taking care of the MG42. Despite its quality, it had some predictability, and Allied soldiers meticulously studied those details to turn them into one of the biggest weaknesses of those wielding this weapon. In fact, the United States Army created training films aimed at helping its soldiers confront its flaws, but also mitigate its virtues. During the 3 years in which this machine gun participated in the war, over 40,000 units were manufactured, with versions from popular brands such as Mauser or Grossfuss. However, due to material shortages in Germany, a new version was created in 1944, dubbed the MG42V or MG45, with lower quality steel and a weight of 9 kilograms. This adaptation of the MG42 had been developed prioritizing an increase in the rate of fire. The MG42 also inspired the German MG3 and the American M60, which featured modifications to the feeding mechanism based on the MG42's belt feed. On the other hand, let's talk about the STG-44, known as the father of assault rifles. This weapon, which was used in dozens of attacks by the Leibstandarte, is also known as the Sturmgewehr 44 or MP44. It was characterized by combining the features of semi-automatic rifles and submachine guns. It could hit both distant targets and short distances during urban combat. It was also capable of providing light machine gun fire. Until its arrival, most German soldiers had submachine guns or bolt-action rifles. Few possessed semi-automatic rifles. The acquisition of the STG-44 aimed to counter the threat of Soviet submachine guns like the PPS-43 and PPSH-41. It had a selector switch, which allowed switching between automatic or semi-automatic mode. This meant it had high adaptability to become either a precision single-shot rifle or an efficient assault machine gun with high precision, damage and speed. It used a 7. 92x33 Kurz cartridge, unlike the 7.92x57 of standard rifles. The bullet velocity was 647 m/s. One of the distinguishing features that set it apart from any other rifle or submachine gun was the Krummlauf. This is a curved barrel with a periscopic sighting mechanism to safely shoot around corners. This barrel has different variations, such as 30°, 45°, 60°, and 90°. Despite its virtues, one of its major drawbacks was that it had less power and range than rifles of the time. By the end of the conflict, German forces had manufactured over 425,000 MP40s. Performance. In 1938, the Leibstandarte played a crucial role in the annexation of Austria to the Nazi Empire. It covered 1,000 kilometers in just 48 hours. Among other activities, it passed through Linz to form an honor guard for the Führer, then continued to the city of Vienna, where it participated in triumphant celebrations. All this was carried out with the full collaboration of the army. Some months later, they did the same to achieve the occupation of the Sudetenland and subsequently the annexation of Bohemia and Moravia, earning the total admiration of Adolf Hitler. By 1939, the Leibstandarte had become a complete infantry regiment with 3 infantry battalions, a select group of engineers, an artillery battalion, and small auxiliary units of anti-tank forces. After their achievements in the various territorial objectives that Adolf Hitler had set in his conquest plan, the young Nazi forces were renamed the Motorized Infantry Regiment Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler. However, when it seemed that recognition was sufficient, the rise of the Leibstandarte had no limit. During the campaign in Poland, Dietrich received the order to annex his forces to the 33rd Army Corps as part of the Southern Army Corps, attached to the 17th Infantry Division, whose flank it covered during the advance of the southern attack pincer. The clashes with the Polish cavalry forces were brutal. Despite the damage received, the Hitlerian forces managed to repel the 28th Infantry Division and the Wolinska Cavalry Brigade. Once the feat was accomplished, they were sent to the area near Warsaw, alongside General Reinhardt's 4th Panzer Division, where they collaborated in the encirclement operations of the Polish units. A year later, the Leibstandarte expanded once again to become a complete motorized infantry regiment. Additionally, a self-propelled artillery battery was annexed to them. Hitler, satisfied with their performance, disregarded their concern about Dietrich's forces' ease in accumulating casualties in combat and sent them to the border with the Netherlands to initiate Operation Fall Gelb, which ultimately became the invasion of France, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Belgium. Their contribution was vital, as they were tasked with constituting the vanguard of the advance, with the crucial mission of capturing a bridge over the Leisel and linking up with General Student's company, the Fallschirmjäger, who would deploy from Rotterdam. Once the invasion began on May 10, 1940, the Leibstandarte covered more than 75 kilometers of the border, captured the planned bridge, and battled for 5 days until the Dutch surrender. It was at that moment that they joined the reserve of Army Group B. After the counterattack of British forces, they were sent to the front with the aim of maintaining the perimeter around Dunkirk and reducing the size of the sector where hundreds of thousands of Allies were encircled. However, not all news was good. After ignoring Hitler's orders to halt the advance, they continued the attack, eliminating British artillery positions on the heights of Württemberg. This decision cost them a great number of casualties, as their greatest weakness was their high exposure to mortal wounds. In December 1940, it was the Führer himself who spoke to the soldiers, seeking a positive reaction. "What my destiny will be, my men of the Leibstandarte, I do not know. But I know one thing, that you will be in the front line of every action. While you have the honor of leading the fight at the forefront of the Reich, it is also an honor for you who bear my name to be at the forefront of the fight." In February 1941, Italy began its incursion into Greece. To the surprise of Benito Mussolini, the Greek army managed to contain the opponent and push them back to the Albanian border. That's why the Italian dictator contacted the Führer to request trained men for such circumstances. Hitler did not hesitate for a second and sent the Leibstandarte. who participated in the Battle of Clyde Pass. There they suffered over 320 deaths. A few days later, they responded satisfactorily in tough skirmishes in the town of Kastoria. On June 22nd of that same year, the Leibstandarte accompanied the 1st Panzer Army and the 5th SS Panzer Division Viking in the complex Operation Barbarossa, more precisely in Rostov. There the panorama was adverse for Hitler's Germany, and the context was no different for the Leibstandarte. After a large number of victories, they were tasting the flavor of a decisive defeat for the first time. While one of the weaknesses of these troops lay in their susceptibility to casualties, their incursion into the Soviet Union truly endured the harshness of death. In just 2 years, they suffered the loss of over 22,000 soldiers and officers. Himmler had no choice but to assign foreign troops to cover the gaps. In 1942, the formations of the Leibstandarte, alongside the battered Das Reich and Totenkopf, were withdrawn from the front and reorganized as Panzergrenadier units in France, where they remained until 1943. After a hiatus, they returned to Stalin's lands and performed notably by recapturing Kharkov under the leadership of the young commander Joachim Peiper. A few days after this feat, along with the 7th Panzer Company of von Ribbentrop, they went after the town of Belgorod. As the Battle of Kursk began, the Hitlerian troops managed to resist a powerful onslaught by the Red Army, with over 600 tanks at their disposal. In 1944, they took part in the Battle of Korsun-Cherkasy, assisting the Wehrmacht in the rescue of 2 corps from Army Group South, which had been completely surrounded by the forces of the 1st Ukrainian Front and the 2nd Ukrainian Front. While the rescue was unsuccessful, they managed to save several dozen comrades. On June 6th of the same year, the Leibstandarte were sent to aid in the defense of Normandy after the Allied landings. Despite being significantly depleted, they managed to withstand the attack with prowess. After participating in the Malmedy massacre, the infamous war crime in which over 80 American soldiers died, the Leibstandarte had their final engagement. In 1945, they fought in the Lake Balaton offensive, in which the German army made its final thrust against the Soviet Union. Some soldiers belonging to this division fought in the Battle of Berlin under the command of other squadrons before surrendering and bringing an end to World War II. Officers and prominent members. Throughout the years, the Leibstandarte had important officers. One of them was the aforementioned Josef Sepp Dietrich. In 1923, he took part in the Munich Putsch. 5 years later, he joined the Nazi Party and soon served as Hitler's bodyguard. After gaining trust with his leader, he rose through the ranks of the organization and was even allowed to sleep in the Chancellor's offices. At the age of 38, in 1930, he was elected a delegate of the Reichstag. A year later, he became an SS Gruppenführer and later rose to Obergruppenführer. At the end of the war and the failure of the offensive, Hitler ordered Dietrich and his men to surrender their armbands, to which Sepp refused. On May 8th, he surrendered to American troops. On the other hand, Wilhelm Mohnke joined the Nazi Party in 1931 and was admitted to the Leibstandarte a few years later. On September 7th, 1939, he was wounded during the campaign in Poland, and after a brief recovery, he received the Wound Badge, the Iron Cross Second Class, and later the First Class. His promotion came swiftly, and a year later, he led the 5th Company of the 2nd Battalion of the Leibstandarte Regiment during the Battle of France. Some sources claim that Mohnke was involved in the massacre at Wormhout, in which 80 French and British prisoners of war were killed. In 1941, after his participation in the Balkans campaign, bad news struck the smile of the prestigious German officer. An attack from a Yugoslav plane directly hit his leg. Although doctors suggested the urgent amputation of the limb, he opposed it, but could not prevent them from cutting off part of his foot. During his recovery, he received the German Cross in gold. At the end of the war, after serving in various military commands and ranks, Mohnke was sent to Moscow, where he was interrogated and kept in solitary confinement for 6 years. Later, he was transferred to the Lubyanka prison and then to the Volkovo prisoner camp, where he remained until 1955. One who carried out orders similar to those of Mohnke was SS Brigadeführer Otto, who had the honor of being appointed as the commander of the Leibstandarte on February 15, 1945. His debut in such a position was during Operation Spring Awakening, which began on March 6th of that year. There, he ordered his men to attack from Hungary towards the Eastern Front. Due to the ambitions of this mission, and despite initial progress, failure came sooner than expected. His next destination was the Vienna offensive, where he had no better luck than in his previous intervention. It was there that Kumm surrendered to British forces along with his troops. After the end of the conflict, Kumm became a successful businessman. In 1951, he founded HIAG, an organization of Waffen-SS veterans. The main objective of this association was to provide assistance to former colleagues and conduct campaigns to rehabilitate their legal status regarding pensions. In the 1960s, HIAG had 70,000 members. However, several years later, political antagonism caused an internal crisis, and in 1992 it was disbanded. Within the Leibstandarte, there were other prominent members. One such case is the aforementioned Joachim Peiper. In 1933, at the age of 18, he joined the Hitler Youth. After a few satisfactory months, he volunteered for the SS cavalry under the command of Gustav Lombard. The specialty of this organization was the mass murder of Jews in the Soviet Union. There they perpetrated various massacres, such as the one in Pripyat marshes. Peiper quickly rose through the ranks, and after obtaining the rank of Sturmmann, his military leadership was quickly noticed by higher-ups. In 1938, after a year of training in the SS Junker, Heinrich Himmler contacted him to offer him the position of his assistant. Peiper proved himself capable, and in 1940 he was appointed platoon leader of one of the motorized regiment units of the Leibstandarte. After successfully leading his platoon in capturing enemy artillery in the south of Valenciennes, he was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class. A few months later, he received the same distinction, but this time First Class. Additionally, he was promoted to SS Hauptsturmführer. But the awards were not only military in nature. He also received a high-end French sports car for the time. After his time in the Leibstandarte, Peiper resumed activities as Himmler's aide. Before retiring, he bid farewell to his formation. "We had to have the toughness, this should be said and forgotten soon, to shoot thousands of outstanding Poles." Additionally, he acknowledged his men after carrying out painful executions, moving people, and evicting hysterical and crying women to clean foreign lands before the invasion. After a visit to Spain to interact with none other than Francisco Franco on November 1st, Peiper was appointed as Himmler's chief aide. Following several forays into different units, in 1941 Peiper was reassigned to the Leibstandarte to assist in the fighting on the Eastern Front in the role of tank commander. Upon his return to these Hitlerian troops, Peiper achieved remembered victories that resulted in the loss of dozens of tanks and casualties among the Waffen-SS infantry. In 1943, he led his platoon in the Third Battle of Kharkov. There they suffered not only the death of their men, but also that of most of their medical personnel. After learning that both partisans and Soviet soldiers burned 2 gasoline trucks and killed 25 Germans, Peiper ordered the entire village of Krasiana Poliana in Poland to be burned. His actions and those of his unit earned him the nickname Blowtorch Battalion. This nickname stemmed from the brutal arson perpetrated. Peiper was also awarded the German Cross in gold. His reputation as a lover of massacres and widespread punishment quickly spread. A former commander of the Leibstandarte, whose identity is unknown, was captured south of Falaise in France. When interrogated by the Allies and asked about Peiper, he confessed that he saw him particularly eager to execute the order to burn villages. In fact, Peiper even said, "Our reputation precedes us like a wave of terror and is one of our best weapons. Even old Genghis Khan would have gladly hired us as assistants." Peiper's career ascended to the most unsuspected successes. Not only was he honored with the Knight's Cross, but Nazi propaganda depicted him as an exemplary military leader, and Himmler dedicated special congratulations to him in a radio broadcast. "Heartfelt congratulations on the Knight's Cross, dear Jochen. I am proud of you." In Das Schwarze Korps, the official SS newspaper, the pages showed a man who was not only a reference, but also the master of the situation. in all its phases. They valued his quick decisions as they ensured victory through his bold and unorthodox orders. They mentioned his gift of being a natural leader, filled with the highest sense of responsibility for the lives of each of his men. In 1944, as the Allies deployed their entire arsenal, Peiper began to lose his composure. It was strange to see him fighting on the front lines, as he did when, together with his men, he sought to halt the American Operation Cobra. Such a defeat destabilized the German leader, who suffered a distressing nervous breakdown that forced him to step away from command. Peiper's last appearances occurred in Hungary in early 1945, during Operation Southwind and Operation Spring Awakening. His aggressive style of attack caused numerous deaths for the opponent, but also for the German army. On May 8th, the High Command ordered the Leibstandarte formation to surrender to the Americans. Peiper chose to ignore the directives and attempted to flee to Germany in search of a new direction. On May 22nd, he was captured by the Allies, and after trials and interrogations, he was sent to the Freising prison in Upper Bavaria. In 1976, Peiper was murdered in his home by a group of anti-Nazis. A key figure in Peiper's achievements was undoubtedly his assistant, Werner Wolff. Their bond began during the Battle of Kursk, after Wolff, a member of the 2nd Battalion of the SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment, destroyed several tanks single-handedly and then refused to surrender to the Russian attack. In November 1943, he fought alongside the Leibstandarte and was shot in the thigh, which forced him to have his leg amputated. However, at the time of the intervention, Wolff pointed his pistol at the doctor and warned him that he was by no means willing to lose his leg. After a tense discussion that included Wolff firing shots into the floor, he managed to avoid the amputation of his limb. To the surprise of many, Wolff recovered from his wound and was able to return to the battlefield. During his years of military career, he received several accolades. In addition to being awarded the Knight's Cross, he was honored with the Wehrmacht Honor Roll, following his actions during the defense of Tilly in the Normandy campaign. On March 19, 1945, Wolff participated in a confrontation in the Lake Balaton offensive, and after receiving an unexpected impact, he lost his life at the age of 22. Another important figure associated with the Leibstandarte was Rudolf von Ribbentrop. At the start of World War II, at the age of 18, he enlisted as a private in the SS Deutschland Infantry Regiment and fought on the Western Front. In 1943, he was assigned to a panzer regiment of the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler Division, and his first mission took place during the Third Battle of Kharkov. For his bravery and honor, he received the Knight's Cross. After the war ended, Ribbentrop spent more than 3 years in American, French, and British custody. After his charges were not proven, he was released. He quickly became a successful wine merchant. Ribbentrop died on May 20, 2019, at the age of 98. Lastly, we will review the life of a Leibstandarte icon, Michael Wittmann. In 1934, he enlisted in the German army, and after joining the SS, he was assigned to the Leibstandarte. One of his most important roles came on the Eastern Front during Operation Barbarossa in 1941. There, his mission was to command a Sturmgeschütz III assault gun and later a Tiger I tank. His tasks were outstanding, and he was appointed platoon leader in the Battle of Kursk. On his first day alone, he destroyed 8 tanks and 7 anti-tank guns. A few days later, things took a turn for the worse for Wittmann after his vehicle collided with a Soviet T-34. In 1943, his efficiency did not wane, and upon arriving in the city of Zhytomyr, he destroyed 10 T-34 tanks and 5 anti-tank guns. A year later, honors began pouring in for Wittmann. Not only did he receive the Knight's Cross, but also the oak leaves from none other than Adolf Hitler himself, which were awarded for his feat in which he destroyed nearly 120 tanks. In April 1944, along with the Tiger Company, they were sent to the SS Heavy Panzer Battalion 101, and then joined the ISS Panzer Corps, of which Wittmann was appointed commander of the 2nd Company. At that moment, he was promoted to the rank of SS Obersturmführer. In one of his early incursions that year, Wittmann devastated several British tanks on National Route 175 in France. Far from halting his advance, He destroyed a large number of tanks, carriers, and various combat vehicles. After becoming a hero, Nazi propaganda wasted no time in constructing an omnipotent image of Wittmann, aiming to idolize him in every German town. It was the commander himself who gave radio interviews exaggerating his exploits. Photos of false magnitude about the destruction of the French town of Villers-Bocage were also published. On August 8, 1944, Canadian forces initiated Operation Totalize. In one of the brutal attacks, they destroyed 4 tanks belonging to the Tiger Company. Wittmann was in one of them. The projectile pierced the tank's hull and ignited the ammunition. The fire was so intense that it engulfed the tank and blew off the turret. In that attack, Michael Wittmann lost his life. This was the story of the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, a formation of soldiers who strictly followed the orders of the Führer and protected his back until the day of their death.